Nintendo just released a Pokemon exclusive Direct the morning of June 6th. After a surprise announcement for the Direct on June 5th, Nintendo dropped a carpet bomb of news in an 8-minute video presentation, revealing that Pokken Tournament is coming to the Nintendo Switch. The Generation 2 games are going to be re-released on the 3DS Virtual Console, and Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are going to be coming later this year for the 3DS. What I find intriguing about this Direct is just how divided the fan base seems to be. Most of the discussion I see surrounding this Direct are people branding the Direct an abject disappointment. There are a few vocal supporters and who are pretty excited, but I tend to side with the people who are rather disappointed. I agree with them to a certain extent, because both of the major rumors that I heard prior to the Direct did not materialize. Neither a Sun and Moon Switch release entitled Pokemon Stars, nor a possible Gen 4 remake were announced. In fact, a writer for Forbes published an article directly after the Direct, pun not intended, with this depressing headline. With today's disappointing Pokemon Direct, we remember that Nintendo is still Nintendo. While the article does give Nintendo credit for the Switch and its innovation, it does deride Nintendo for this strange Direct. Kaiju, what are your thoughts?
So, I do side with you, unashamedly, on the side of abject disappointment. The minute I heard that Pokken was being released for the Nintendo Switch, I didn't even have time to be excited because it was instantaneous that I knew that this was nothing to be excited about. This was literally something that was guaranteed to have happened. It's a trend that Nintendo has to follow if they want the Switch to be successful, because the main complaint that I heard with the Wii U was that they didn't want to purchase the console, but they loved the games. So any business company with any semblance of business knowledge or knowledge of what their fan base wants would understand the logic behind recreating Wii U games that were popular on the Switch. That just makes financial and business and logical sense, right? So that didn't surprise me at all. Why that was included in the Direct, or why that warranted a significant majority of the Direct with that long commercial that was really awkward and just didn't really make sense what was going on to me half the time. Like, the majority of the Direct was focused on Pokken. And that, to me, seemed a bit uncouth, because this does not deserve a Direct.
Well. Mm-hmm.
Then we move on to the point of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And that was perhaps the most stinging portion of the Direct, because it showed that Nintendo is simply involved in the business of making more money. Not making new games, making more money. The only thing about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the only difference that we know right now is that there's going to be more Pokemon, which is great, but whatever happened to recreating older gens? That seems like a trend that was really exciting, really fun, and really interesting, and it made me want to go and buy the game because it would allow me to relive memories that I created eons ago. Now I'm just going to have to walk through and go through Alola, which was, in my opinion, a mediocre world at best. Like, it was not the best at all. I thought Kalos was better, for crying out loud. Alola had a lot of great features added to the game, but the actual islands themselves were not actually all that amazing. Like, the atmosphere I didn't feel was that engaging. And so, knowing that now I'm going to have to spend $40 to get involved in a community, because everyone's going to be updating, and they're not going to be backwards compatible, I don't think, that just angers me that I'm going to have to go through Alola again and have to experience it over again. And on its own, that wouldn't be a bad thing, but that I'm going to have to spend $40 on it is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, indeed. Here's my take on this. For starters, I don't share quite as abject of disappointment about the Direct. I'm still plenty disappointed. It will be getting into my several gripes about it later on. But the main problem I have with this is that Ultra Sun and Moon. Now, let me get to something before I get into my complaints. I think they're going to be good games. Pokemon games have always been good games, right? I can't name a terrible Pokemon game. Even the worst games in the series are there's not really any a definitive worst game. Like, people debate and argue over what's the best and what's the worst gen. They're all so good, right?
Certainly not
So
Sonic in that regard.
right, yeah, exactly, true. No, Pokemon games are pretty much guaranteed to be good. They're guaranteed to sell a lot. So just keep in mind that, I mean, the audience is just know this, that the audience for these games, no matter how many complaints we might have about what they're doing, they're going to eat it up regardless. They're going to buy the Pokemon games. I'm going to buy a copy of the game. You're going to buy a copy of the game. And so Nintendo has done their job, right? Even though we might not be as excited about it, they're still going to sell us on it anyway, and they've done their job from a business standpoint. But I think that's exactly the problem, as you brought up. This is just a business decision. It's not a decision in the interest of the fans. It's not a decision that is really going to generate a lot of excitement among the community. And I don't think is what the series needed right now. Because now let me get into my biggest problem. My biggest problem with these new games is that they are going back to a formula I absolutely loathe. And that's the black and white model. I absolutely hated and still hate to this day the sequel model of Black and White and Black and White 2. And they completely disregarded making a older generation remake. This nearly deconfirms the Gen 4 remakes that everybody was really hyped about. That's unquestionably my biggest complaint today. I want Gen 4 to be treated right, because in my humble opinion, I feel those games are the worst in the series in terms of gameplay. Now, I probably stepped on a lot of toes with that statement. So what I mean by that is that the premise of Sinnoh is great. I like the story. I think it's also my favorite in terms of not really how many. There wasn't that many new Pokemon they released. But I liked how they made a lot of new evolutions of older Pokemon. I wish later games would do that more, actually. There's so many Mons that deserve an evolution or deserve maybe a baby evolution here and there. But in terms of the gameplay itself, I think Sinnoh is so slow. It's an absolute chore to get through those games. And they made some really weird decisions. Like, for example, until the Platinum remaster, there was only like 2 or 3 fire Pokemon you can catch. Like, you can get Chimchar, Ponyta, and then you catch Heatran. Like, that's a really, really poor choice in terms of the diversity of Mons. And that had to be fixed in Platinum. So my point is, in terms of gameplay, Sinnoh, I think, in my view, is the worst of the series. And I think that for a region that had so much potential, I was hoping Gen 7 would finally give Sinnoh the proper treatment in a glorious 3D remaster. But unless they go for a completely different direction and just totally shock us all, this definitely seems like they're going back to the black and white model, and Sinnoh is not going to happen either for a few years, or it's going to be pushed back to Gen 8. And I think that makes me and a lot of the fan base really salty. So that's my main problem, is that Ultra Moon and Ultra Sun, they're going to be good. I am excited for the new Pokemon. I don't know if that means there's going to be Gen 2 Alola forms. That's what I hear. That's what I hear is being thrown around the most, is we're going to get a lot of new Alola Gen 2 forms, in which case that's going to be pretty cool. And there might even be, I also heard there's going to be new Ultra Beasts. And so there might be brand new Pokemon as well that we haven't seen, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's rather unprecedented. I don't remember Pokemon releasing just a bunch of brand new species in the middle, like right in the middle of a generation. Can you think of an exception to that?
The only thing that I can think of, perhaps, is Volcanion?
Yeah, sort of, but not on the scale of what they're seemingly promising.
Certainly not numerically
right.
The same, but I think circumstantially they're comparable.
I think they're circumstantially comparable. And I mean, that was even relatively recent, right? I can't think of that on the scale, on what we're talking about in Gen 2, 3, 4, 5. It only started happening more recently. So I think that's pretty cool. It seems like a pretty cool idea. And the Necrozma fusion with Lunala and Solgaleo, that is just ripped right out of the playbook of Black and White. And I mean, I'm rather mixed on that, because again, it's another aspect of Black and White which is kind of cool, but it's the Black and White model again, which I really dislike. And I'm kind of kicking against the goads on that. So, point is, in my view, with this revelation, it's going to be a good game. I'm excited to see what is going to happen with the story continuation of Alola, because for me, I felt the game's major weakness was that it was too hand-hold-y, if that makes sense. I wanted them to just let me go and do my thing. I played Pokemon for over a decade now. I know what I'm doing, right? And they just kept on holding my hand, right? I personally enjoyed the environment a lot. I thought it was a very nice, vibrant environment. I thought it was a nice gameplay change from just going and conquering gyms. And I absolutely loved the idea of defending my defending my champion title. Like, I think those are really cool ideas to build upon. Spoiler alert, I want to know what happens to Lily when she goes to Kanto, right? I think this could be a brilliant opportunity for them to tie in the Kanto region even more somehow. So we don't know much about these games. We just know that they exist. But the simple fact that they're following Black and White is really ticking me off.
Unfortunately, I wish I could share your optimism, or not even really optimistic. You're not even really optimistic. I share your optimism.
I'm curious. I'm just curious. Yeah.
But the thing for me, my main objection to pretty much every point that you brought up is that I too am excited for the storyline expansion. I too am excited for the additional mons. I too am excited to see some of the new changes that they're going to be making to Alola. My only problem is that I'm going to have to spend $40 to do it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes me angry.
I feel like this game could have just been tacked on as DLC.
Exactly.
That's what I see in the community, and that's what I totally agree with. This could have been a DLC, and they're milking us for $40. That makes me salty.
The fact that they couldn't take the time to create a new game for it. They already have the source code. They already have the model. The model's fine, and I don't want the audience to misinterpret what I said and how I bashed Gen 7. Okay, Gen 7 is my favorite generation. But the reason why it's my favorite generation is not because of Alola. The reason why I like Generation 7 the most is because of the new features. That formula, that Gen 7 formula of the new features, the abolition of HM moves, the abolition of they got rid of so many new things, and they added so many new things that are just so helpful, and
it just really streamlines the experience.
Refreshing, exactly. And to me, it really, really was a wonderfully executed experience. Alola itself, the atmosphere of Alola is great, but it's not the best. What I am saying, though, is that Nintendo has the formula, so it wouldn't be as much work as creating a brand new gen, right? They have the formula. They can transpose that formula onto a new world. But instead, they're giving us Alola with a couple new features. And as you said, that would make much better DLC than it would simply, rebranding it as a new game and then selling it and making everyone have to spend $40 on it. And that is what makes me salty.
Exactly.
And that is why I can't regard this as anything other than an abject disappointment.
Yeah. Now, the other main thing, and I don't want to forget about the Gen 2 announcement, because they announced that the Gen 2 games are going to come out on the Virtual Console. I've been wanting that for a while, and I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty stoked that they're going to be coming back. I think I pretty much covered it. I think we both agree there. Gen 2's great. There's not much else to say there. I think the other main...
But on the other side, if I can interrupt real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
Is that there's no surprise in this. Like, this is not that information is great, but it's not worthy of a direct that has so much hype swirling around it.
Right.
We have the Gen 1 remakes. It's a logical step. They're going to make the Gen 2
We knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. The question was when.
So it's great, but it's not newsworthy. The only thing that would have been newsworthy, and that is newsworthy, is Pokemon Ultra, and is the Pokemon Ultra series, and we already talked about those, so I won't.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't want to beat the dead horse there.
No.
I think the other main can of worms I wanted to open was Pokemon Switch. And I hear a ton of people really angry about it, and I'm honestly, this is where I might disagree with you. I honestly don't get that. Here's why. I think patience is the key here. Game Freak has never, never announced a Pokemon game for a home console the same year that it came out. Just let that sink in for a second. Game Freak is independent from Nintendo. They're going to do what they want. And they're going to take tips and clues. You know, they collaborate heavily, but Game Freak does what they want. They're their own studio. It would not make much sense for them to release Pokemon Stars on a brand new home console, which has only sold, I mean, only in quotation marks, 8 million consoles so far, versus the humongous, ginormous install base of the 3DS, which is, 30 to 40 million right now? And it's been going strong for 5 years now, maybe even 6. I forget. Was it announced in 2011 or 2012? I forget. 5 or 6 years now. All right. And Pokemon has done enormously well on the 3DS. So it doesn't make business sense, and it just doesn't make logical sense for them to release Stars, or whatever the next game is, on the Switch right now. Because I think what they're trying to do is they're going to have the Switch sales, they're going to watch the Switch sales, they're going to see them ramping up, and this will allow Game Freak the time to and the opportunity to release Pokken for the Switch, release Ultra Sun and Moon, and release Gen 2 to kind of fill that void and kind of drag it out a little bit. And if they release a Pokemon for the Switch, and I say if, and the reason why it's an if is because Game Freak has generally been pretty averse to putting a main series Pokemon game on a home console. I mean, the last time was Colosseum and XD, right? It's Pocket Monsters, right? That's what Pokemon is short for. Right. Well, I mean, you got to be kidding me. Pokken is not a main series game. It's a spinoff. All right? No, I'm talking about something like Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon, Platinum, Colosseum, and XD. Those are main series games. We're not talking about spin-offs, right? So Game Freak has a philosophy of not putting Pokemon on a home console, a main series game on the home console in general. They just don't do that. They generally don't prefer to do so. So in my view, they might just release side projects on the Switch. They might not even release a main project on the Switch. Now, having said that, Stars has quite a bit of, I wouldn't exactly say confirmation, but a lot of heavy implication that it exists and it's going to be there. We'll talk about that more as we probably hear more Stars news dribbling out. But the point is that if it happens, it's going to happen in probably late 2018 to 2019. The Switch needs time to get on its feet. It would be stupid for Game Freak to hurt their sales, really, by releasing a Pokemon game on a console which hasn't really penetrated the market yet.
I mean, that makes sense, and I agree with that, but I would go further as to say that releasing it on the Switch would probably be a mistake, barring the fact that they don't release it on the 3DS as well, because I get the fact that they want that it's, the name is derived from Pocket Monsters, meaning that it's a handheld system, and I get that the Switch is now a handheld system as well as a home console, but I think that it would be extremely negligent of them to not release it on the 3DS as well. And and the thing is to me, the release of Pokemon Stars is something that is actually newsworthy. And so, again, I question Nintendo's judgment because we're talking about the Direct. So I'm going to reflect on Stars' implication on the Direct. Mm-hmm. And that is that until they're ready to at least give us some confirmation of Stars, if that information is to be forthcoming, why did they not wait to tell us that in the Direct? That's my question. Because the thing is they can release this Direct, and this Direct gives us, information that is rather disappointing. And I think that Nintendo knows that there's a lot of hype surrounding Pokemon Stars. So if it is in fact to be confirmed, and if it's not going to be confirmed, if it doesn't exist, that's a whole nother can of worms we'll have to discuss later. But if it does in fact exist, and let's assume that it does, they could have at least given us something to look forward to, something to, moisten our palate before we are introduced to these games. Because these games, all honestly, and I think Game Freak knows this, are nothing more than a rebranding scheme to sell more. And although they'd never admit that, I think they'd be wise to at least give us some semblance of information on Pokemon Stars if it does in fact exist.
Indeed. So before we wrap up here, I kind of neglected to talk about my take on Pokken. I'm a tad bit more optimistic on it than you are, but I kind of share your overall sentiment of why is this such a newsworthy event from Game Freak's standpoint when we knew it was going to happen, or it was likely to happen. It just in terms of what the Direct showed us. I mean, yeah, we had that kind of weird, not sob story, but kind of tugging on your heartstrings story that they usually do, and sometimes it's awkward and weird, and sometimes it works, but this time I think it was really more on the awkward side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But what they showed us for Pokken, I think Game Freak and Nintendo are just kind of pouring the coals on the heads of Wii U owners at this point. I think that Nintendo has re-released a lot of Wii U popular games on the Switch, and this new release for Pokken, why wasn't any of the new stuff included as DLC for Wii U owners? The answer is that the Wii U was not really as financially successful as they wanted. Pokken didn't really get off to a fantastic start on the Wii U. It sold a decent amount of copies, but I think they intended for a while to put this on the Switch and to move it to the Switch after, the 3D, after the Wii U version was kind of just floundering around. And so I think the new characters are hype. I'm really stoked that Decidueye is coming to Pokken. Like, Decidueye is my favorite starter from Sun and Moon, and he looks absolutely amazing in the game itself. So I think Pokken Director's Cut, I don't even know what it's called. I think it's Pokken DX, I think is what they're calling it. Pokken DX is going to be good. It's going to sell copies, and I am hoping that Pokken will become more of a mainstream thing. We discussed this in the ARMS episode as well. I'm hoping that Pokken can kind of become a bigger deal in the gaming community as a result of this, and I hope it can become I hope it can be tweaked. I hope there can be a better formula behind it to support it. But again, just to reiterate the point, this isn't something that should have taken up over half of the Direct. They should have switched it. They should have had
switched it.
Ultra, and I knew I made that pun, but I wasn't going to note that. They should have put way more stock in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and the Gen 2 remakes, and then just have like a 30-second teaser of, hey, Pokken DX is coming, and have silhouettes of Darkrai and Skizor and Decidueye or something. Like, I personally feel that would have been a way better route
time
to take.
Allocation. Yeah,
but way better time allocation. It seems way too tilted towards Pokken, definitely.
Yeah. No, and I found that the announcement of Pokken on this Direct was a bit uncouth, but let me reiterate, or I don't know if I've reiterated this, but I think I did in the ARMS Direct. I am a huge fan of Pokken, and I think that it deserves a lot more credit and a lot more exposure than it gets. So don't get me wrong, I am very excited about the implications that Pokken on the Switch will have on the gaming community. I think it will increase Pokken's influence and make it a game that is played a lot more on the professional scale, and I think it's going to be really fun to see how it develops. My gripe with it is that, A, it took up so much time in the Direct, which invariably sapped away information that we get from Pokemon Ultras, and B, that it's not really newsworthy, right? It doesn't it doesn't warrant a Direct, or it doesn't even warrant even half of a Direct. Maybe it warrants, a little 10-second, 30-second clip, but not 4 minutes of a Direct, right? It just doesn't make sense to me, and it's not newsworthy. And the more I think about it, the more I somewhat remember me calling its release in the ARMS Direct. I don't know exactly what I said, but I think I said something along the lines of Pokémon's probably going to be coming to the Switch. And that's not some feat of sorceress genius on my part. That's
Right.
just
You're
logical
no
sense
Nostradamus
that's
for
going
that.
to happen. Like
Exactly.
it's absolutely going to happen.
Right.
And it does make me a little bit salty as a Wii U owner, because now I feel like I've been slighted in some way, because now they're getting Splatoon remake. It's Splatoon 2, but let's be honest, it's just a remake. Splatoon 2, Mario Kart remake.
I don't know about that, but go ahead.
Mario Kart remake, believe me. I've played through
Oh yeah,
Splatoon.
Mario Kart 8 remake, totally. Yeah,
but I've played through Splatoon, the entire storyline. I've played online. I've played all the features on it. I would know, right?
Yeah.
You haven't. And Mario Kart 8 I've played, and all these games I've played, and we're getting all these remakes, and so half of me is just considering selling my Wii U and selling the games that have remakes, and then using the funds to get a Switch. But honestly, at the end of the day, and in summation, it really does seem that Nintendo has regressed with the last Pokemon Direct that we received, and it's repeating the mistakes that they made in past generations. So while I don't doubt that Ultra, Pokken, and Gen 2 will be good games, I really do think that they will be good games, even despite all my gripes, we all know that they could and should be doing so much more and giving us better. At risk of sounding ungrateful or rude, I almost feel they're kind of being, I guess I might say, lazy and taking the easy way out here. But overall, I guess there is some positive things that come out of it, even if it is swamped and mired in stuff that doesn't exactly engender joy.
Disappointment.
Yeah. Okay, very good.